What's going on YouTube? Mark Sixma here with another music production video. Today I'll be breaking down my track Never Forgotten. It's a track I released under my M6 alias, and I'll show you how I layered my leads and basses, talk a little bit about the swing in the track and some other essential elements as well. Speaking about M6, let me know what your favorite M6 track is in the comments below. If you find this video helpful or enjoyable, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. Also, if you want to see me in action in the studio, or maybe you want feedback on your music, be sure to join my live streams on twitch.tv/marksixma. Alright, let's dive into the track. Alright guys, I just opened my project for Never Forgotten. There's a few things I want to discuss with you. Let's first go over the bass in this track. I'll just play the intro drop and then I'll show you how I layered my bass. That's a good place to start. Now it sounds pretty simple, right? So let me just play the kick and the bass together and loop that a little bit. What I always do when I want to make a bass line, I will just try to find one sound which is already almost what I want. So in this case, it's from Spire. This is the sound. What I have on here is a reverb, FabFilter Pro R, and then I'm doing some delay as well, and then there's a compressor. So without it, it sounds like this. Oh yeah, and then one thing to bear in mind is I also have a master bus, a group bus for my bass, which I'll go over in a second. So each part of the bass line also goes through this bus, but I'll show you how to do that later. By the way, I'm using Cubase, that's my main sequencer. What I show you can be done in pretty much any music production program, but I'm using Cubase, so that's what I'm going to show you guys. So the first bass line we have here. It's already a pretty nice sound. It has like a little bit of an edge. I added some delays with the Serum FX. And then the reverb, the reverb doesn't sound that good on its own. But together with the other elements, I think in the mix it sounds pretty good. I just needed something to fill up that space. And then I have a Vertigo VSC2, which I use a lot. The snare punch compression is a great way to get some punch on snares, of course, but also on your lead sounds and basses like I did here. Next, what I did is I made a copy of that same part in this one, but I totally treated it differently. First, let me play how it sounds. So this is only like the nitty gritty and then the mid-high, basically what you're getting here. This is a Pro Q2, a great equalizer by FabFilter. There's this preset called Phone, and it basically just uses certain frequencies which are also used in phone conversations. So this is how it looks like EQ-wise. So it's removing a bit of the highs and then a lot of the lows and then boosting the mid-highs. What I did apart from that is there's a bit crusher on it. Let me show you how it sounds without. So this is just EQ. Then a bit crusher gives it that nice little edge. You can see it here, what's happening with the bit crusher here. And then I'm applying something called the Haas effect, which is creating some stereo depth with like a perception of stereo with a stereo delay in which the delay on one side is almost 0 and the other side, the right side, is 50 milliseconds, which sounds like this. I'm going to make a special tutorial about this later, but this is what I do here. So without it, and with, suddenly it creates a certain spatial, psychological space, basically. You perceive it as it's something that's stereo separated, which essentially it is. You're just delaying one of the sides by a few milliseconds. Next up here is another VSC2 compressor. I copied the previous one, so this was on there as well. Together they sound like this. Without the extra layer, and with. Then I added another bass to create some presses in the, well, first I think I went for a sub because it's lacking a little bit of sub. This is just some boosting some of the lows and some compression as well. But I'm mainly using it for the sub without it. And then finally I added another bass for something like the mid. Something from the mid lows. Because I think I added this later on because I really wasn't feeling it that much in the drop. So it really needed something extra. So that's the layer I did. It's with the mute bass with the silent one. And then for the processing on the bass group, there's a FabFilter Saturn on here. Basically some tape distortion. A UAD SSL-G bus compressor, which I'm just using it kind of to glue together the tracks so that all the bass sounds sound like one sound instead of like a lot of separate sounds. There's a Pro Q2 to really boost the highs as well, to make it stand out in the mix. And then for some reason I added another EQ to boost some of the mid-lows, which I could have easily done in the same EQ here, but I don't know why. There's a Pro L to keep everything a little bit in check, which is a limiter. And then finally there's a LFO tool, which is doing some side chaining. This is the curve you hit. So basically it's volume automation, which looks like side chaining, but essentially it's ducking the bass sound every time the kick is coming in. So that's it for the bass group. Let's dive into the leads for a little bit. Oh yeah, actually one thing that is essential about this track is the rhythm. So I'm using something called shuffle or swing. This is depending on which DAW you're using. They call it differently. So let me apply it just a little bit here on the main bass. So if I zoom in a little bit, you can see the notes. You see the notes aren't exactly on the grid here. So what's being done, you're going to move the second and the fourth one, you're going to move them slightly. This is what happens with swing. So let me show you without swing how it sounds like. I'll go into the quantize menu. So I'm putting it on 0% now. It sounds like this. So there's not much swing going on. And if you increase this, if you zoom in, you can see what is happening to the notes, right? So you're slightly moving the separation of the 16th notes. So we're going to quantize that. And then it sounds like this. Basically what we had before. So this is an essential part of the track. I don't recommend doing this in all your tracks, but it can be a nice way to get some groove going in your tracks. If everything is feeling a little bit too static, swing or shuffle is a great way to bring some groove to your tracks. I also use it in the lead, of course. So if you use it on an essential element like the bass and lead, then you're also going to need to do it in your percussions so that it sounds consistent. Otherwise, the track is going to sound a little bit messy. So you see me doing that there's a shaker here as well, which I made, which is also using the swing. So that everything comes together nicely. Now, back to the leads. Let me open the folder here. As always, I always start with one main sound and then I build around that. So in this case, it's this sound. This is where I introduce it. Let me show you the part where it plays the main theme. As you can see, this is also shuffled. It basically sounds like an ARP, but it's because I draw in all these notes so that it sounds like an ARP, basically. I made this with the Massive. This is, I think, from a pack by Benno de Goeij, legendary producer. This is part of his, I forgot, oh yeah, here, Massive Essential Collection, I think it's called. So that's where I got my lead sound from. I have a lot of inserts here. Without it, already sounds good. Let me open it up a little bit more. And then the drop. First I apply an EQ, removing the lows, a little bit of a boost here. Quarter fuzz. I love this multi-band distortion unit. Then a Sun EQ, I use this a lot. This is an attenuator, like sort of like an EQ, but not exactly the same, bringing out a little bit more of the mids and the highs. Then my favorite reverb, Arts Acoustic, applying some space. Compressor here, again, the Vertigo VSC2. Give it a little bit of extra punch. Oh, and then I use another multi-band distortion unit. It's a little bit daring to use that after a reverb, but I'm using it like very subtly, just to give it a little bit of an extra warmth. And then again, LFO tool for sidechaining. Together it sounds like this. So if I turn it off now, you can hear this long reverb tail, which is maybe a bit much, but since this is a trance track, it's okay. Then my second layer is a square lead, which doesn't sound good on its own, but it can really bring something extra to the sound. Let me show you without. And then with. It gives it a little bit of an edge because the main sound is a little bit soft. Then another lead here. Giving it a little bit more body. Another layer. Giving it some more space. Not really needed. This one is not doing much. But I felt it just added something in the atmosphere. I think this is from the same pack. This is very close to the lead that Ori Nielsen used in Between the Rays. That's why I have called it lead rays, basically. And then here you have another detuned lead, like a big detuned, which sound a bit out of place by itself, but if you layer it with the other parts, it kind of makes sense. So that's basically how I made the leads, and let's see if there's anything on the group channel. Oh yeah, again, here's an SSL. This is a UAD plugin, so if you want to use this one, this is a recreation of an actual physical compressor by Solid State, SSL Solid State Logic. And you can get it if you use the UAD Apollo. In my case, I'm using the Apollo Twin. If you use any of the UAD hardware audio interfaces, you can use it. So if you want to use that, then you need to get one of those. Definitely recommend the Apollo Twin. It's been working great for me. And then there's a limiter again to keep things in check a little bit. And here I'm boosting it a little bit, ever so slightly, just about 1 dB. Together, yeah, with the rest, it sounds like this. So it doesn't sound like all these different leads or all these different basses. They're just playing together and mixing nicely. Oh yeah, in the drop, actually, I added another bass line. Just like long notes and heavy sidechaining. If you look at the sidechaining here. Because I felt without it, it was missing a bit too much in the drop because the leads are so overwhelming. So instead of taking away a little bit of the frequencies of the lead, which maybe I could have done, I decided to add another bass. Yeah, and that's pretty much how I layered it. Here I have another kick drum. It's a sample I use a lot, actually. I didn't do much to it, just a spike in the high without it. Sounds like this. And with it adds, it just punches through the mix a little bit more, just a very narrow bandwidth here. 6 dB spike. You can go a little crazy with it. I actually made another tutorial about this, how you can make your kicks more punchy. So if you like, check that out as well. But that's a trick I applied here. Let's see if there's anything else interesting in the track. Oh yeah, in the intro drop, I also use a what I like to call stab. This one. It's also the sound I use in, I think, my remix for Off the Hook by Armin van Buuren and Hartwell. It's made with the Serum. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail. It's a pretty standard sound. I made it very short. What gives it space is the Pro R. I mean, again, I'm using Pro Q2 here. Quadra Fuzz for multi-band distortion. It's just to give it a little edge. The Sonic Q, the Fab Filter Pro R is what's doing the most here. Without it, let me play it with the rest. And with, gave it a little bit of a pre-delay. Without it, with a little bit of pre-delay, it comes up a little later. That gives it a little bit of movement, which I was looking for. And then on the note itself, you see me go up and down here. That's the sound you hear. The whoop whoop is the legato or the portamento, which you can turn on in your Serum here. Put it on always so that every time I press different notes of different pitch, it will glide towards the other notes. So that's what's happening here. Just subtle, just pretty fast. So that's a quick breakdown of my M6 track Never Forgotten. Hope you learned something new. If you want to talk a bit more in detail about music production, drop by at one of my live streams on Twitch. Keep dropping those beats, and I'll see you next time.